Welcome to Divine World Order, where we vibe higher. It's LaVinci. In this video, I want to speak on thought forms, and I like how they broke this down. I feel like they did a amazing job on translating this. But let's get into it. The generation of thought forms. We are now in a position to more clearly understand the master's words, the mind working in its own region, and the subtle matter of the higher psychic plane generates images, thought forms. Imagination has very accurately been called the creative faculty of the mind, and it is so in a more literal sense that many may suppose who use the phrase the image making capacity is the characteristic power of the mind. And a word is only a clumsy attempt to partially represent a mental picture. An idea, a mental image, is a complicated thing and needs perhaps a whole sentence to describe it accurately, so a salient incident in it is seized, and the word naming this incident imperfectly represents the whole. We say triangle, and the word calls up in the hearer's mind a picture, which would need a long description if fully conveyed in words. We do our best thinking in symbols, and then laboriously and imperfectly summarize our symbols into words. In regions where mind speaks to mind, there is perfect expression, far beyond anything words may convey. Even in thought transference of a limited kind, it is not words that are sent, but ideas. A speaker puts into words such part of his mental pictures as he can, and these words call up in the hearer's mind pictures corresponding to those in the mind of the speaker. The mind deals with the pictures, the images, not with the words, and half the controversies and misunderstandings that arise come about because, people attach different images to the same words or use different words to represent the same images. A thought form then is a mental image created or molded by the mind out of the subtle matter of the higher psychic plane, in which, as above said, it works. This form, composed of the rapidly vibrating atoms of the matter of that region, sets up vibrations all around it. These vibrations will give rise to sensations of sound and color in any entities adapted to translate them. Thus, and as the thought form passes outward or sinks downward, whichever expression may be preferred to express the transition into the denser matter of the lower psychic regions, these vibrations thrill out as a singing color in every direction and call to the thought form whence they proceed the elementals belonging to that color. All elementals, like all things else in the universe, belong to one or other of the seven primary rays. The seven primeval sons of light. The white light breaks forth from the third logos, the manifested divine mind. In the seven rays, the seven spirits that are before the throne, and each of these rays has its seven sub-rays, and so on, words in sequential subdivisions. Hence, amid the endless differentiations that make up a universe, there are elementals. They're getting into the astrology and shit now. But belonging to the various subdivisions as they are communicated within a color language and grounded on the color to which they belong. This is why the real knowledge of sounds and colors and number underlying both sound and color, has ever been so carefully guarded. For the will speaks to the elementals by these, and knowledge gives power to control. Damn. I don't think motherfuckers even understand what that was saying. But this is just a little insight on why certain numbers and colors are being used with certain rituals, because this is how you collect the people through these thought forms. All of these things represent different thought forms, and if you can get people to connect to a certain thought form, you can get them to carry out certain purposes and things like that, and you can even make people react and respond in a certain manner. That's pretty much out of their control, because like I said, basically these words and these sounds or whatnot are connected to the elementals. So it's connected to your will. So these things create desire. It's kind of like when you see, the racism and the division on the TV. These are actually thought forms, and by basically giving attention and things to that, you're basically empowering it. It's no different from religion or anything. These are thought forms. Jesus, Buddha, whatnot. These things are representing thought forms, and they gain more power by, how much energy you give to them. And that's the thing. It speaks to your will. So it's going to create a desire, which is basically giving out some type of form of energy, whether it's money or whatever. But let's get deeper into this. It's KH speaks very plainly on this color language. He says, how could you make yourself understood? Command, in fact, those semi-intelligent forces whose means of communicating with us are not through spoken words, but through sounds and colors and correlations between the vibrations of the two. For sound, light, and color are the main factors in forming those grades of intelligences, those beings of whose very existence you have no conception, nor are you allowed to believe in them. Atheists and Christians, materialists and spiritualists, all bringing forward their respective arguments against such a belief, science objecting stronger than ever of these to such a degrading superstition. Students of the past may remember obscure allusions now and again made to a language of colors. They may recall the fact that in ancient Egypt, sacred manuscripts were written in colors, and that mistakes made in the copying were punished with death. But I must not run down this fascinating byway. We are only concerned with the fact that elementals are addressed by colors, and that color words are as intelligible to them as spoken words are to men. The hue of the singing color depends on the nature of the motive inspiring the generator of the thought form. If the motive be pure, loving, beneficent in its character, the color produced will summon to the thought form an elemental which will take on the characteristics impressed on the form by the motive and act along the lines traced. This elemental enters into the thought form, playing to it the part of a soul, and thus an independent entity is made in the astral world, an entity of a beneficent character. If the motive, on the other hand, be impure, revengeful, maleficent in its character, the color produced will summon to the thought form an elemental which will equally take on the characteristics impressed on the form by the motive and act along the lines thus traced. Damn. In this case, also, the elemental enters into the thought form, playing to it the part of a soul, and thus making an independent entity in the astral world. Shit. An entity of a maleficent character. For example, an angry thought will cause a flash of red, the thought form vibrating so as to produce red. That flash of red is a summons to the elementals, and they sweep in the direction of the summoner, and one of them enters into the thought form, which gives it an independent activity of a destructive, disintegrating type. Men are continually talking in this color language quite unconsciously, and thus calling round them these swarms of elementals, who take up their abodes in the various thought forms provided. Thus it is that a man peoples his current in space with a world of his own, crowded with the offspring of his fancies, desires, impulses, and passions, angels and demons of our own creating throne round us on every side, makers of weal and woe to others, bringers of weal and woe to ourselves, verily a karmic host. Clairvoyants can see flashes of color constantly changing in the aura that surrounds every person, each thought, each feeling, thus translating itself in the astral world, visible to the astral sight. Persons somewhat more developed than the ordinary clairvoyant can also see the thought forms and can see the effects produced by the flashes of color among the hordes of elementals. Yeah, I try to put you in a damn crazy house. You tell motherfuckers you seeing colors. Activity of thought forms. The life period of these ensouled thought forms depends first on their initial intensity on the energy bestowed upon them by their human progenitor, and secondly on the nutriment supplied to them after their generation by the repetition of the thought either by him or by others. Their life may be continually reinforced by this repetition, and a thought which is brooded over, which forms the subject of repeated meditation, acquires great stability of form on the psychic plane. So again, thought forms of a similar character are attracted to each other and mutually strengthen each other, making a form of great energy and intensity active in this astral world. So that's just like even with this Black History Month. This shit is a thought form. It's a psychological weapon because it's literally putting you in a past situation it's like you can't move forward. You know what I mean? Every year, I know what black people gonna be doing 10 generations from now. Black History Month. So the fact that we're holding on to this thought form, we are attracting things connected to this thought form. And that's the reason this thought form was created. People think Black History Month was something for people to give black people credit and all of that. But, well, why ain't they fucking, you know what I'm saying, giving black people this credit year round? I feel like people would actually want to feel appreciated or whatnot, or recognized all year round, every day, versus just a fucking month. You see, you know, and most of this shit be fake, but still you see how they portray people to look. You know what I'm saying? That's why you have to disconnect from these thought forms of black and shit like that. Your soul at your essence. As long as you're looking at these colors and shit, you're going to keep being in a divisive state. And you're going to keep giving your energy and your will to these thought forms. You have to free yourself of these thought forms. So, it says thought forms are connected with because these thought forms are not yours. You know what I'm saying? You're creating your own thought form. But thought forms are connected with their progenitor by what, for want of a better phrase, we must call a magnetic tie. They react upon him, producing an impression which leads to their reproduction. And in the case mentioned above, where a thought form is reinforced by repetition, a very definite habit of thought may be set up. A mold may be reformed into which thought will readily flow, helpful if it be of a very lofty character as a noble idea, but for the most part cramping and a hindrance to mental growth. That's putting this, like I said, this black history, putting this shit in the schools. You know, you literally, you know, this is basically just watering people down. It's giving them a thought form that they're connecting to and how they see themselves, and they can't grow past that thought form because it clouds their mind, and it's literally attracting the reality that they have. So it's like, even if they wanted to believe that it's not true, it's hard for them to get out of it because of the lifestyle they done created by these thought forms. And I'm going to speak on more of that when I get done. We may pause for a moment on this formation of habit, as it shows in miniature in a very helpful way the working of karma. Let us suppose we could take ready-made a mind with no past activity behind it. An impossible thing, of course, but the supposition will bring out the special point needed. Such a mind might be imagined to work with perfect freedom and spontaneity, and to produce a thought form. It proceeds to repeat this many times until a habit of thought is made, a definite habit, so that the mind will unconsciously slip into that thought. Its energies will flow into it without consciously selective action of the will. Let us further suppose that the mind comes to disapprove this habit of thought and finds it a clog on its progress, originally due to the spontaneous action of the mind and facilitating the outpouring of mental energy by providing for it ready-made channel. It has now become a limitation, but if it is to be gotten rid of, it can only be by the renewed spontaneous action of the mind, directed to the exhaustion and final destruction of this living fetter. Here we have a little ideal karmic cycle rapidly run through. The free mind makes a habit and is then obliged to work within that limitation, but it retains its freedom within that limitation and can work against it from within till it wears it out. Of course, we never find ourselves initially free, for we come into the world encumbered with these fetters of our own past making, but the process as regards each separate fetters run the above round. The mind forges it, wears it, and while wearing it can file it through. Thought forms may also be directed by their progenitor towards particular persons who may be helped or injured by them. According to the nature of the ensouling elemental, it is no mere poetic fancy that good wishes, prayers, and loving thoughts are of value to those to whom they are sent. They form a protective host encircling the beloved and ward off many an evil influence and danger. Not only does a man generate and send forth his own thought forms, but he also serves as a magnet to draw towards himself the thought forms of others from the astral plane around him, of the classes to which his own ensouled thought forms belong. He may thus attract to himself large reinforcements of energy from outside, and it lies within himself whether these forces that he draws into his own being from the external world shall be of a good or of an evil kind. If a man's thoughts are pure and noble, he will attract around him hosts of beneficent entities, and may sometimes wonder whence comes to him the power for achievement that seems, and truly seems, to be so much beyond his own. Similarly, a man of foul and base thoughts attracts to himself hosts of maleficent entities, and by this added energy for evil commits crimes that astonish him in the retrospect. Some devil must have tempted me, he will cry, and truly these demonic forces called to him by his own evil add strength to it from without. The elementals ensouling thought forms, whether these be good or bad, link themselves to the elementals in the man's desire body and to those ensouling his own thought form, and thus work in him through coming from without. But for this they may find entities of their own kind with which to link themselves, else can they exercise no power. And further, elementals in the opposite kind of thought form will repel them, and the good man will drive back by his very atmosphere, his aura, all that is foul and cruel. It surrounds him as a protective wall and keeps evil away from him. There is another form of elemental activity that brings about widespread results and cannot therefore be excluded from this preliminary survey of the forces that go to make up karma, like those just dealt with. This is included in the statement that these thought forms people the current which reacts upon any sensitive or nervous organization which comes in contact with it. In proportion to its dynamic intensity, to some extent it must affect almost everyone. Though the more sensitive the organization, the greater the effect. Elementals have a tendency to be attracted towards others of a similar kind, aggregating together in classes, being in a sense gregarious on their own account. And when a man sends out a thought form, it not only keeps up a magnetic link with him, but is drawn towards other thought forms of a similar type, and these congregating together on the astral plane form a good or evil force, as the case may be, embodied in a kind of collective entity. To these aggregations of similar thought forms are due the characteristics often strongly marked of family, local, and national opinion. They form a kind of astral atmosphere through which everything is seen, and which colors that to which the gaze is directed, and they react on the desired bodies of the persons included in the group concerned, setting up in them responsive vibrations. Such family, local, or national karmic surroundings largely modify the individual's activity and limit to a very great extent his power of expressing the capacities he may possess. Now, like I'm saying, with the schooling, teaching these little babies slavery and shit like that, telling them they were slaves and all this shit, putting that into their minds at a very young age. That's the fertilizer, So it's just saying, when you adopt to these thought forms, you literally adopt that lifestyle. You attract these things to you, and it has a bigger, a bigger energetic field when you have an actual culture of people tapping into a certain idea. You know what I mean? It gives it a certain energy. It's like a cloud, it creates an actual atmosphere beyond it, between these people that share this thought form. And the people can't go beyond this thought form, and they don't even realize that it's a thought form. Like, what was it? What was it before this thought form? Who were you before this thought form? And that's what religion or anything. Everything is a thought form. But it's saying, suppose an idea should be presented to him, he can only see it through this atmosphere that surrounds him, which must color it and may seriously distort. Here then are karmic limitations of a far-reaching kind that will need further consideration. That's like, they ain't on your vibration. Like, some people just ain't gonna hear it, and they're not meant to, and they might hear it later. The influence of these congregated elementals is not confined to that which they exercise over men through their desire bodies. When this collective entity, as I have called it, is made up of thought forms of a destructive type, the elementals ensouling these act as a disruptive energy, and they often work much havoc on the physical plane. A vortex of disintegrating energies, they are the fruitful sources of accidents, of natural convulsions, of storms, cyclones, hurricanes, earthquakes, floods. These karmic results will also need some further consideration. All right, I'm about to wrap this up, man. I think that's about it. I'm about to wrap this up though. Having thus realized the relation between man and the elemental kingdom and the molding energies of the mind, verily creative energies, and that they call into being these living forms that have been described, we are in a position to at least partially understand something of the generation and working out of karma during a single life period. I say rather than a life, because a life means too little if it be used in the ordinary sense of a single incarnation, and it means too much if it be used for the whole life, made up of many stages in the physical body, and of many stages without it. By life period, I mean a little cycle of human existence with its physical, astral, and devachanic experiences, including its return to the threshold of the physical. The four distinct stages through which the soul passes in order to complete its cycle. These stages are retrodden over and over again during the journey of the eternal pilgrim through our present humanity, and however much the experiences in each such period may vary, both as to quantity and quality, the period will include these four stages for the average human being and none others. It is important to realize that the residence outside the physical body is far more prolonged than the residence in it, and the workings of karmic law will be poorly understood unless the activity of the soul in the non-physical condition be studied. Let us recall the words of a master pointing out that the life out of the body is the real one. The Vedantins acknowledging two kinds of conscious existence, the terrestrial and the spiritual, point only to the latter as an undoubted actuality as to the terrestrial life, owing to its changeability and shortness. It is nothing but an illusion of our senses. Our life in the spiritual spheres must be thought in actuality, because it is there that lives our endless, never-changing, immortal I. This is why we call the posthumous life the only reality, and the terrestrial one, including the personality itself, only imaginary. During earth life, the activity of the soul is most directly manifested in the creation of the thought forms already described. But in order to follow out with any approach to exactitude of the workings of karma, we must now analyze further the term thought form and add some considerations necessarily omitted in the general conception first presented. The soul working as mind creates a mental image. The primary thought form, let us take the term mental image to mean exclusively this, immediate creation of the mind, and henceforth restrict this term to this initial stage of what is generally and broadly spoken of as a thought form. This mental image remains attached to its creator, part of the content of its consciousness. It is a living, vibrating form or subtle matter. The word thought, but not yet. Alright, I think that's it. And get to the other stuff later. But what I really wanted to say is we got to understand that everything is a thought form, and we have to be aware of what we're giving our thought forms to. Our thought forms are the reason for the people we're bringing into our lives, the places we're at, when accidents happen or situations. It don't have to just be an accident. Excuse me. So these thought forms, like I said, words are ultimately sound, color, vibration. So any thought that you have is leaving a vibration. It's a color, it's a frequency. So when you put these thoughts and words out, you're literally creating You're literally connecting with thought forms that's already out there, and you're attracting thought forms that's already out there. So this is the thing to understand, thought forms on a deeper level, understanding awareness on a deeper level. So we don't want to be tied to the news and things like this. This is how the news and things can be used as a weapon. With Democrats and Republicans, these are thought forms, So we need to understand, that these thought forms, connect people with entities, whether it's for power or destruction. And we can look at this in the example of like a Jay-Z. Jay-Z he knew what he was doing. He connected himself to a thought form that was called Rockefeller. And by him connecting himself with this thought form, this put him in the same manner as these other people. You see him at the table with the Warren Buffetts and all of this. The Rockefellers, the same people that hang around the Rockefellers are that's down with him. He connected himself to that entity. And then again, we can look at Kanye. Kanye, he connected himself to the entity in the thought form of Christianity. So this propelled him up to another place that he wasn't at before. He gained a lot more followers and things like that because of the people that's connected to the thought form of Christianity. So this is how a lot of people literally big themselves up, even on the YouTube world. The people that's just doing gossiping and stuff on, they attract that in their life initially, but it seems like they're having success and things like that. It seems like there's success, but it's only through them connecting with these other thought forms. You know what I mean? They're putting themselves with other thought forms. If you can understand that. So we are even ultimately thought forms. We create thought forms. You know what I'm saying? It's ultimately about that vision that you give someone. You're not a word. It's the vision you give someone. So we need to understand why we're connected to certain thought forms. Certain thought forms we're connected to, attract certain things to us. So we need to understand why. Why do I like fighting videos? Why do I like people, see people getting shot or whatever they are? Why do I like listening to certain music? We need to understand these thought forms are going to bring certain realities to us. And we need to be aware of that and not try to ignore it and take accountability. So this is just something to basically make you raise the level of awareness and vibration on your thought forms and make you question the thought forms, that you're standing behind. Whether it's whatever, NBA, NFL, religion, these things are thought forms. And, when people use these thought forms that's been around for so long, they can gain that power. Like I said, with the Kanye, Christianity, that thought form's been around forever. And you see he connected himself to that. And with the Rockefeller, he connected himself to that. You see the different celebrities with the numbering and things like that. They're connecting themselves to these thought forms. So this is a way to try to control your energy and, become more pure. Because every thought that you make, there's a karma for it. Even if you don't act on it, even if you don't do it, even if you don't even say it out of your mouth, you're paying a karma for that. In some shape, you know what I'm saying? And form. And we just need to be more conscious of it. Events and shit we go to, it's because we're collectively tied into a certain thought form to meet certain people and accept certain people. That's why some people of a certain thought form you'll never meet, and in some chances people can meet. But the connection will come down to being whether is it relatable or not relatable. So you got to know what you're attracting. You're naturally going to attract the opposite of whatever it is, but it's different levels of it. It's different levels. Drill music. This is a thought form. Prime example. You can just look at what's going on. It's a thought form. So, I think y'all pretty much get the point. Just a little something I found interesting and I wanted to share. But I'll be back in a minute with some more. But I'm out. Oh yeah. Can't save everybody.